Okay, so I've been getting a lot of emails. I can't read them all and address them one by one here, but I'll just kind of pick and choose. But people who send emails, please know that I am reading all of them. I just can't discuss them individually. So this one, I think, was one of the hardest for me to read because I could feel the suffering so much from the words. Okay, it's from a man who is a professor at NYU, and woke up Wednesday morning to a Trump victory, and many of his students are minority students, and he's wondering how he can be there for them. So this is what he said. That morning, wading into the news media just a bit, I didn't even want to show up for class. But somewhere between a shower and a cup of coffee, I realized I had to hold space for my students' fears. I didn't want them to suffer alone, and truly, I didn't want to be by myself that morning either. I sent out a brief, so just stop right here. Here's somebody that, like many of us, we want to feel sorry for ourselves and crawl up back in bed with our blankie and pretend it all didn't happen. And he has compassion, and he realized he can't do that, much as his self-centered wish would like to, but he had to be there for others. Okay? So already you can see there's this compassion there. So this is the message that he sent out to his students on their chat channel. This is hard, and I hear you're suffering. I want to recognize that if you do not feel that it is in your best mental, emotional health interest to attend class today, by all means, send me an email to let me know you're staying home and take time to do what you need to do. That said, our class is about disrupting simple stories. It's a class on storytelling, about disrupting simple stories and giving space to those narratives which might be difficult but must be given room. I will hold class today not as part of our normal business, but as a space for anyone and everyone to come and dialogue about what is arising for you and how we might move forward through this together. I will be there. You are welcome to arrive with all the complexities of feelings that you have. You are welcome to bring others. You are welcome to be open and honest and to respect others as we all process this shift in our country. And I thought, wow, I'm just receiving that from a professor is gonna completely change your mind, because here's space. Here's a compassionate person, and you know that you can be who you are and, arrive with all your complexities of emotions and whatever. And then listen what he did. I bought bagels for everyone. That's sweet. Yeah. I bought bagels for everyone and surprised that almost all of my students arrived ready to participate and share. Students spoke openly about their concerns. They were afraid that a man who had run a campaign with rhetorical, heavy and fearing and hurting people like them, Arab, Muslim, LGBTQ, Latino, undocumented, Black, poor, disabled. He didn't put women in here. Anyway, and people like them and those in their immediate families, that he would live up to his promises, or worse, that his promises were already embedded in the minds and bodies of the majority of white America. They were afraid for their lives. This was real fear. There were tears and frustrations leading to anger. And this, only being the morning after, already came with reason for some of them to fear violence and hatred. Someone had vandalized the Muslim prayer room by writing Trump across the door before classes began that morning. This is Wednesday. This room sits a short distance away, and so students were aware of this as they sat down to be vulnerable with me. This was fear that had no real direction, and so it looked and felt beyond what any of us could deal with alone. And this is often how our minds work, you know. When something happens, our mind explodes. Our creative writing goes ballistic, and we create all sorts of horrible scenarios. And the horrible scenarios have some root connection to the situation, yeah, but we've really embellished them, you know, kind of completely out of shape. But they seem very real at that time. They don't seem embellished at all. Yeah. I held this space with my students for 2 hours as they cried about their families being torn apart and their futures being ruined by the silent majority of people too afraid to tell me to my face they never wanted me to be equal to them or their children or grandchildren. My students aren't as afraid of Trump as they are of the ways he has become a symbol of normalized white supremacy in the U.S. They are very aware of complex systems. They know stories now and how they spread and give rise to actions. And as I write this, their fear seems justified. There has been a string of anti-Black, anti-Latino, and anti-Islamic violence across the United States that is yet unreported, and at least 2 LGBTQ murders in the immediate aftermath of the election decision. So 2 days later, today's Saturday, 3 days, these have been reported. Okay, there's been a lot of, I spoke about them yesterday, different, I call them hate crimes, you know, or not all of them have been crimes, they've been hate taunting of people, you know, doing really mean, saying or drawing or whatever really mean racist, prejudiced things. So it's out now. My social media accounts are awash with friends who are encountering violence, not simply hate speech, but physical violence, openly in the streets of New York City. Many of these people are students and professors. While I felt grateful that my Dharma practice has given me the resources to be mindful and give room for me to listen to the voices of others, I felt unable to focus. So did I. Did any of you feel unable to focus? These last few days, it's been so, I'm trying to teach on emptiness, and it's like, actually, you know, it's really good because having to teach, it's like he had to show up for his students, I have to show up for you. It gets my mind off of all of this, and I come out of the teachings feeling, you know, rejuvenated. Okay. I couldn't give anything else to my students with confidence. I tried to ask how we as a group might keep our boldness and take up dialogues with others out of compassion. But I really wanted to tell my students to go rage and scream and mourn and learn to defend themselves physically and emotionally and spiritually. I couldn't sit firmly in a space of compassion because I didn't know who to direct it to besides myself. I still don't. Okay, so boy, I can understand that. I was seeing all the protests. By the way, there's protests in over 37 U.S. cities. And tomorrow's Sunday, over 10,000 people have signed up in New York City to march from Union Square to Trump Towers. That's now. Who knows how many are going to show up. Okay, so, and most of them are peaceful, except 2 nights ago in Portland, there was some stuff, and they arrested people. Yeah. So I have no desire I'm not somebody who goes to marches, but I sit there and I'm going, I'm with you people, And at the same time, it's like the march can't be about us and them. Yeah, the march, the protest has to be about, characteristics, about principles, about ideas. If it's about people, it's going to turn into us clobbering each other, and it's just going to explode everywhere, and that doesn't do any good to anybody. Yeah, if we can keep it on the level of protesting speech, protesting ideas, and this is the key, I think, really differentiating the person from the speech, the person from the ideas, the person from the action. That a person can have ideas you really disagree with. They can have speech that you consider abominable. They can do actions that you think are horrendous. But none of those things are the person themselves. Okay? So the person themselves, what are they? They are a suffering, sentient being overwhelmed by afflictions and karma. So people who act and speak in hateful, harmful ways, it's not because they're happy. It's not because their minds are filled with wisdom. Their minds are filled with ignorance, filled with pain, and those emotions, their speech and so on, it's not who they are. If we look, in one way, they're sentient beings overwhelmed by afflictions and karma. Do I sometimes get overwhelmed by afflictions and karma? You bet. Yeah. Do I want somebody to hate me for the rest of my life because I get overwhelmed by afflictions and karma? No. Therefore, I should not hate these people, because these people, at the end of the day, have what we call the Buddha nature. They have the potential to become fully awakened Buddhas. We cannot just say they are others. Just because they may say, we are other and don't belong, we can't say they are other, sign them off with one characteristic and throw them out the window. We have to keep our compassion, and we have to keep our wisdom, seeing that people are not their actions. Yeah? They are not their actions. Their actions come not from who they are as a suffering human. Their actions come not from their Buddha nature. They come from the afflictions that are overwhelming them at that moment. Yeah. And so that acts as the foundation to look at them with compassion. Yeah? And if we're going to have any resolution to this, we have to have some empathy, some compassion, some ability to listen to others. Of course, we would love for them to listen to our pain. Of course. Yeah? So it doesn't mean that we stuff our emotions and we stuff our pain. We speak out, but we try and speak out in ways, in language, doing things so that other people can understand, so that it leads to something good. Setting a trash bin on fire doesn't really help anybody. You can understand how people who are enraged, who feel left out, would, vandalize a place, just anything to take out your rage. But that doesn't help. Yeah? So we have to come back to really managing our own emotions and trying to think clearly. Even when it's difficult, even when other people aren't. Yeah? We have to hold ourselves to a different standard. If we hold ourselves to the standard of people who are biased and prejudiced and mouthing off, then we become just like them. Just like I told you at my Vietnam War protest, the guy picking up a brick and throwing it at the cops, and I'm going, wait a minute, he's behaving just like the people that we're protesting against. So we cannot do that. I know it's hard. But if we want to be successful now, if we want to save ourselves from creating negative karma, if we want to create peace in a chaotic world, we have to work with our own anger and feelings and so on, and not blow things out of proportion. Yeah, even in the threat of harm. Yeah. And here I just think of that monk that His Holiness talks about, who was imprisoned in Tibet and tortured in Tibet, even though he didn't do anything wrong. When he finally got out and got to Dharamsala and met His Holiness asked him, what was it that you feared the most when you were in prison and getting tortured? And this monk said, losing my compassion for the guards. Whoa. Yeah. So if we can hold that as that's where I want to go. I may not be there yet, but that's where I want to go in my spiritual development. Yeah. And I'm not just going to say, well, they're doing it, so I can do it. Like we did when we were kids. Remember when we were kids? They threw sand at me, so I can throw sand at them. Yeah. No. Yeah. We've got to work with our minds. And it's hard. In the streets around my office, I came across a woman looking lost. And when I asked her if she needed directions, she simply said that she was still dizzy thinking about the election. I held open my arms and we embraced while she cried. This is a stranger. This is a compassionate person. This happened twice on the same block with two different people. A hug was one of the things I could muster, and something I so desperately needed yesterday. Yeah. So yeah, we do what we can and respond from the heart. And it does a whole lot of good for ourselves and for others. I feel it is important to note that even before I arrived in class, the first thing that my students had brought up Wednesday morning were horror films. This was the only thing they could relate to in their current situation. You see how our mind goes, horror films, yeah? It was about catharsis in some ways, and we didn't shy away from it. We talked about how these films might exist in all their grotesque violence as metaphors for the way hateful language is hurting them now. We asked about how they are visualizing their fears. We talked about fantasy versus reality. But it seems striking that so many of them imagine that the world they now live in is closer to a nightmare with confusing spurts of violence than simply an election lost in favor of an opposing candidate. But I'm sure his holding this space so that people could say whatever they needed and they were safe saying all that, I think that helped, my guess is, calm them down. Yeah, because when you're given the space to put your stuff out there, yeah, very often you yourself come to realize, whoa, that's a little bit extreme. Also, I don't think we can hold really strong emotions continuously for a very long time. Yeah, at some point, we have to rest. And our mind, settles a bit. It might get revved up again, but hopefully it can keep settling more and more. I sit with many different totems of identity that each offer me different reasons to feel like I am not welcome in my own country now. That's sad, isn't it? Somebody born in this country, raised in this country, part of a minority, feels he doesn't belong in this country anymore, or he's not welcome here. That's sad. But he does belong in this country. And all the people who are immigrants and residents and of all sorts of different minority groups belong in this country. Yeah. And I was thinking about it. We talk about diversity, and sometimes we think of diversity, the standard is white, middle-class, Protestant America, and everybody else is diverse from that. I think if we hold that as what diversity means, that's a wrong model, because we could, whatever minority we exist in, and we can all find some minority to identify with, is we could say that minority is the norm, and everybody else is diverse from that. Yeah. In other words, that what I'm trying to get at is we all belong here. And we shouldn't think that the norm is something else that we aren't. Yeah, we all belong here. We all live here. This is our home. And we've got to work to improve it. Yeah. And not just say, I don't belong, and back away. Because we do belong, don't we? I mean, we're here. We belong. Yeah. I've had too much exclusion karma, experiencing the result of exclusion karma in my own life. I don't want to perpetrate that anymore. Okay, so he says, all these often give me different reasons to feel like I am not welcome in my own country now. But I teach, and so I have to stay present for students who are paying good money to learn. I don't think that's the real reason why he's staying present for them. And possibly live lives with more access and education than their parents and ancestors before them. So he realizes he's interdependent with all of his students. And how he acts will affect all of these kids. Okay. So I was hoping you might be able to provide some insight for teachers and by extension parents who represent these groups which Donald Trump seems so intent on vilifying and who are hurting badly in this moment because we know how much work we now have to do for ourselves and others just to survive. So yeah, we have to do a lot of work for ourselves and others just to survive. And this is our reality. And it's also the field in which we enact our spiritual practice. Yeah, this is the field of our compassion. This is the field in which we meditate on Dharma ideas and apply them to our own mind so that we can deal with the present situation. Yeah, it's not the time where we, go to our hermitages and say, this world is screwed up. Let them fight it out. I'm going to my hermitage and ignore everybody else. We have to keep a balance as people in the spiritual practice tradition. We have to keep a balance. We have to really, put energy into our practice to keep our own minds steady and our own minds compassionate. And then we have to be there for other people and help other people and do whatever is necessary to somehow remedy or at least improve the situation for everybody involved. Okay? So we're each going to have our own way of doing it. Yeah? But we have to integrate Dharma and life because it is integrated. It has to be. If we don't integrate Dharma and life, how are we going to attain realizations? All of our understanding is just going to be words and concepts. And we're going to be like that guy that the Tibetans always tell the story of. This one guy, yogi, meditated for years in a cave all by himself, on compassion, on fortitude, just soul meditation. And he came down to town after some years to, get some supplies. And then somebody said something he didn't like and he got angry at him. Yeah? Is that the kind of spiritual practitioner we want to be? No, that guy didn't realize anything. Yeah? How might we live in the Dharma and still hold the space to be angry and mourn with our communities? Mourn with our communities, yes. Be angry. Personally speaking, I don't want to fall prey to anger. Because I know that when I fall prey to anger, I don't think clearly, and then I say and do things that I later regret. Yeah? Understand other people's anger? Yes. Know what I don't like and what I do want to see in society? Yes. But anger towards people, better I don't go in that direction. How might we live as an example for those we must face each day and tell them without irony that their futures will hold potential? Because their futures do hold potential. Yeah, especially somebody who's teaching young people. Boy, this election is not destroying young people. This election is going to invigorate them. And I'm happy that they're finally getting involved, because for so long it seemed like they were just kind of apathetic, at least, compared to my generation. Yeah. So if this makes young people more involved, and if they can channel their involvement with compassion and not create more of us and them, and if they can learn to speak and express their ideas in ways that other people can hear and understand them, they will be able to do marvelous things. Yeah, so they're completely full of potential. I don't see one election as destroying people's lives because I don't think Donnie's going to be able to do everything he said when he was on the stump. Okay, already he's saying that there's a few things about Obamacare that he wants to keep. Yeah, like having kids be on their parents' insurance until they're 26 and not being unable to get insurance because of pre-existing conditions. That's good. Now I know at this factory in Indiana that he always kept talking about where they were going to move to Mexico. Now all those people in Indiana, they're waiting for him to call the CEO of their company, and say, you can't move the company to Mexico. I want to see him do that. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. I'm not saying I think they should go move to Mexico, but I'm saying he said a lot of stuff that I don't think he's going to be able to carry through on. Yeah, because that's not the way the world works. Unless he wants a presidency where every single night people are in the streets protesting, unless he wants that, he's going to have to, chill out a bit, I think. Yeah?
Has he come out to, not necessarily repudiate, but
He hasn't yet come out and said to people who are doing crimes, feeling that they have been empowered because he was elected. He hasn't come out so far and said anything about that. Okay? Yeah. But at some point, he's going to have to switch and calm down his language. Yeah. I mean, he's going to have to. Building a wall is impossible. It's impossible. Yeah. Engineering-wise, practically, it's impossible. He can't build a wall. Yeah. Rounding up 11 million immigrants in 1 year, that's impossible, unless he wants to make a police state. But I do have faith that people won't let him make it a police state. And we have enough laws and enough people who are judges in courts who I think are reasonable, and so there will be some check on his power.
He did get his Twitter account back, and the first day after he saw the protests,
Yeah.
he was quite harsh with them, saying that this was a historical, fair election. You crybabies, you villains, or whatever. And the next day he said, they're just being passionate about what they really believe in, and they're upset right now.
Yeah.
He came back around and actually
Right.
kind of chilled his...
And I think he came back around because somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, "You're president-elect now. You can't act like you did before."
You represent everybody, like you just said.
Yeah.
He also blamed the media for fomenting the...
Yeah. But I think the media influenced the election a lot.
No, but
Yeah, but he blamed it for fomenting the protest. But it didn't, people were going to be out in the streets anyway.
Last night I read on a slightly different tack. In the Wisdom Journal, they published an excerpt from Bhikkhu Bodhi's The Buddha's Teachings on Social and Communal Harmony, and I just cried after reading it. Because just the way he was depicting the Buddha's time, was highly fractured. There's a caste system, kings are fighting with each other, and here comes this man who is establishing a community of peace. And it's not like the monks and nuns were very well behaved all the time. So just knowing that the Sangha has survived
Mm-hmm.
500 years gave me a lot of hope.
Yeah.
That's why I just
Yeah, actually, that's a very good thing, that knowing that the Sangha, a community dedicated to compassion and to peace, has survived 2,600 years. Yeah, that gives us some hope, doesn't it? Somebody else wrote, and maybe I'll read this one later, saying that, it's getting late, I better stop, I'll do this one later. But anyway, yeah, it gives us hope.